The grand conclave of the Archelian Star Alliance lay nestled deep within the crystalline heart of the planet Orenthia, its marble-pale spires spiraling toward the lavender heavens. Inside, the air thrummed with urgency. Delegates from more than 200-member worlds clustered in stately alcoves, their shapes and colors as varied as the stars they governed. Serpentine Zoraxians, whose scales blinked with bioluminescence, crystalline Lumarines, whose bodies chimed like wind chimes when they moved, and opalescent Vreth, whose shifting hues reflected their every emotion, all had assembled on a single, stark declaration. Humans had revealed ships that shouldn't exist. The arrival of the data courier. At the center of the vaulted chamber stood High Chancellor Myrtal, her pale silver robes trailing behind her like mist. Her six-faceted eyes, glowing soft violet, flicked from one anxious face to another. By her side hovered a slender servant droid, its chassis gleaming obsidian. Suddenly, a crystalline data courier drifted through the open doors, its multifaceted wings catching the overhead lights. It glided to the dais and deposited a prismatic shard in front of the Chancellor. A hush swept the assembly. Myrtal reached out with an elongated finger and activated the shard. Holographic tendrils of light unfurled upward, coalescing into three-dimensional renderings of sleek, obsidian-black vessels. Their hulls were smooth, featureless, except for pulsating cobalt-blue conduits that snaked along the sides. "These are the so-called Aegis-class ships," Myrtal announced, voice calm but edged with steel. "Registry, none. Transponder codes, none. The Sol Federation database contains no record of such slipstream-capable vessels." Murmurs rose like tidal waves. Ambassador Kelvair of the Vreth leaned forward, his opalescent form shimmering. "They slipped into subspace corridors beyond the Epsilon expanse undetected," he said. "Their emergence constitutes a breach of the Interstellar Non-Proliferation Pact." Panic and blame High Admiral Quastel of the Lumarines tapped her crystalline talons on the arm of her seat, each tap echoing like a tiny chime. "Are we to believe these humans have mastered slipstream drives? The very technology our greatest physicists still debate?" Her voice, melodic yet firm, carried through the chamber. "If so, every star system we cherish is at their mercy." A raucous cry erupted from the back. Zoraxian delegate Rimshar, his dark scales mottled with red, lashed his tail. "Our patrols guaranteed the Sol Centauri corridor was secure. How did these ships bypass neutral space sensors? Someone in our security apparatus is responsible for this failure." Eyes turned toward the spidery representatives of the Alliance. Intelligence Bureau, AIB, whose black angular forms stood impassive in a shaded alcove. Two AIB supervisors exchanged glances so slight they might have gone unnoticed, but for the tension that followed. Myrtal raised her gavel, its silver head reflecting every surprised face in the room. "Order," she commanded. "This session is not for finger-pointing, but for fact-gathering and action." Unearthly revelations, the holographic vessels rotated slowly as the Chancellor summoned further data. Bright streams of information, power outputs, hull compositions, sensor logs flashed. In the air, the ship's energy signatures registered at levels far exceeding those of even the grandest Alliance dreadnoughts. To generate a slipstream corridor of this magnitude, Myrtal mused, would require tapping subspace currents at, and I quote, "unprecedented quantum harmonics." She let the words hang. Tech that, until now, existed only in theoretical conjecture. There was a collective gasp. Ver raised a crystalline hand. "The humans cannot have reverse-engineered this overnight. They must have been developing it in secret for decades, perhaps centuries." "Sheer speculation," snapped Rimshar. "We must react before they can bring more of these dreadnoughts online." At that moment, a soft clicking interrupted the bickering. All eyes turned as the doors slid open again to admit a single figure. A human envoy, Ambassador Elise Chen, clad in formal black and silver attire that contrasted starkly with the vivid attire of the other delegates. She stepped forward with measured grace, her shoulders squared and chin held high, a human voice. "High Chancellor Myrtal," Ambassador Chen began, her voice clear and precise. "Honored delegates of the Grand Conclave." The chamber fell, silent. "I understand your alarm. Our appearance here was unannounced, our technology unregistered. For this, we apologize. But we come with an offer of transparency and cooperation." A ripple of disbelief spread. Admiral Quastel narrowed her crystalline eyes. "Transparency? You breached sovereign space without warning. Why should we trust you now?" Chen inclined her head. "Because we too value peace. The slipstream. Breakthrough was achieved not to wage war, but to expand the boundaries of exploration and knowledge. We propose to share our research under the oversight of the Star Alliance's own scientific consortium." In stunned murmurs, the delegates leaned toward one another. The improbable vision of humans offering to place their greatest technological leap under Alliance supervision was unprecedented. Myrtal's gavel hovered once more. The solemn weight of her next words would define the course of interstellar history. "We will consider your proposal," she intoned, voice grave. "But let it be known, any deviation from good faith will be met with decisive measures." "Ambassador," Chen bowed. "Understood, Chancellor. We await your guidance." She turned and exited as swiftly as she had come, leaving behind a council chamber teetering between dread and hope. A fragile piece, the holographic Aegis ships flickered and dissolved. Myrtal rose from her dais, radiating authority. "Let us convene an emergency session of the Scientific Consortium," she ordered, "and activate the Intelligence Bureau's highest priority investigation into the human slipstream project." As delegates filed out, some still whispering, others glancing toward the chamber doors, Myrtal allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The galaxy had been jolted awake by the shock of humanity's leap. Diplomacy teetered on a blades, edge between alliance and confrontation. Deep in her mind, she acknowledged a strange thrill, the promise of new discoveries, and the fear that accompanied every great unknown. Outside, the twin suns of Orenthia dipped beneath the horizon, casting long indigo shadows across the spires. In that twilight, the fate of multitudes would be decided by voices just like hers, and by a species long underestimated, now unveiled. The intrepid Dawn drifted through the silent void, its dark hull absorbing the distant starlight. On the bridge, Admiral Celine Archer stood before the main tactical display, which glowed with cascading streams of decrypted human communications. Arrayed around her were the ship's captains, intelligence officers, and weapons specialists, each acutely aware that they were about to challenge a foe whose very existence had shattered galactic assumptions. "Report," Archer commanded, her voice calm but edged with steel. Commander Jonas Malik, the Chief of Intelligence, tapped a hollow console. "We've intercepted fragments of their comm chatter. They refer to something called the Quantum Slipstream Array, a reactor network embedded in the keel of each Aegis-class cruiser. It channels subspace harmonics in a way our physicists only dreamed of." He narrowed his eyes. "They're not using traditional warp fields or standard jump gates. This is unprecedented." Archer's lips curled into a determined smile. "Exactly why we must seize their technology intact. If we study even a single functional slipstream reactor, the Alliance gains an edge no adversary can match." She turned to Lieutenant Harrow at Tactical. "Harrow, overlay their fleet's projected positions in the Zeta 9 cluster. Show me every possible vector." Harrow's fingers danced across her console, and a three-dimensional star map materialized in mid-air. 10 human cruisers formed a loose, perimeter around a gravity-stabilized waypoint, an ancient celestial landmark repurposed by the humans as a covert staging ground. Beyond that, automated sensor drones marked by flickering red dots patrolled the outer fringe. "Phalanx formation," Archer ordered, pointing at the corvettes and frigates arrayed behind the intrepid Dawn. "Deploy ion net torpedoes. We'll sever their slipstream conduits and cut off their escape." She paused, gaze steely. "All ships, maintain silent running until final approach. No transmissions. We hit fast, we hit hard, then we board." Below decks, engineering teams readied the modified boarding shuttles. Each shuttle was bristling with magnetic clamps and energy scissors designed to latch onto human hulls and carve. "Open maintenance hatches." At her side, Chief Engineer Moley whispered, "Admiral, our simulations show a 30% chance their hull plating will reject our ion nets. They've adapted some form of phase-modulated armor." Archer nodded. "Understood. Compensate with photon lances if nets fail, disable their shields, then switch to mass clamps. No limp vessels left drifting." She glanced at the viewport. "Let them be the first to underestimate us." Hours later, the Alliance fleet emerged from the dark subspace corridor. The Zeta-9 cluster's sapphire-tinted nebula rays washed over the assemblage of human ships. Archer's heart tightened. This was the moment of truth. "All units, target slipstream pylons," she ordered. "Fire on my mark. 1, 2, 3. A volley of ion net torpedoes surged forward, weaving a glowing web around the nearest Aegis cruiser. For a heartbeat, the human vessel shimmered, its slipstream shields buckling under the assault. Then, in an instant, it vanished, not destroyed, but phased out of real space. "Damn it!" Malik cursed. "They've triggered a secondary slip kernel, something beyond our scans." Archer's jaw clenched. "Impossible. They must have redundancy built into every node." She tapped her comm. "Retreat phalanx. Regroup on me." The frigates and corvettes pulled back, the phalanx dissolving as ships reversed thrust. From the distance, a single silhouette reappeared. The human flagship Pioneer's Dawn. It drifted serenely into the cluster's heart, its slipstream reactor glowing like a cobalt-blue star. A communication flare arced toward the intrepid Dawn, slicing through the void in a ribbon of luminous data. Archer activated the bridge link. Ambassador Mayatal's stately form blinked into view, holographically projected from the Grand Conclave back on Orenthia. "This assault is unauthorized," Mayatal said, her tone icy. "Cease fire immediately, Admiral Archer, or face the repercussions of violating Alliance protocol." Archer's fingers hovered above her console. Through the comlink, she sensed the tension in Mayatal's voice, equal parts outrage and fear. "High Chancellor," she replied, voice firm, "your human vessels are operating outside regulated space. We will not stand by while an unregistered fleet tests the boundaries of subspace integrity." My conversation cut short as a sudden blast rocked the intrepid Dawn. The ion net projection around the cruiser disintegrated, and a cascade of folded space energy swept into the Alliance formation, scattering ships like paper in a gale. On the main display, Harrow pointed. "They've deployed slip skimmer fighters, small, agile vessels capable of microjumps. They're armed with singularity torpedoes. If one detonates against our shields, it could collapse our decks." Alarms wailed. Red emergency lights bathed the bridge in a bloody glow. Archer gritted her teeth. Evasive maneuvers, scatter pattern Delta 7. Launch counter-slip interceptors. We cripple their fighters, then fall back to a safe distance. Within moments, the intrepid Dawn twisted and dove through the swirling nebula currents, pursuing the darting human skimmers as they danced between bursts of subspace light. The bridge crew fought valiantly, marshalling every tactic in the Alliance arsenal. But with each human advance came the unmistakable truth. The humans had not only matched the Alliance, they had leapt beyond it. As the dust of battle settled, the intrepid Dawn hovered crippled but intact, Archer took a steadying breath, her gaze fixed on the scarred void ahead. "Set a course for Orenthia," she ordered. "We return with news, and with respect for the foe we have underestimated." Below her, the crew exchanged weary glances. The gambit had failed, but the mission had yielded something far more dangerous than technology. The realization that humanity was not simply another star-faring species, but the vanguard of a new cosmic order, and in that revelation lay both hope and the specter of an even greater conflict to come. The Zeta 9 cluster lay before the Alliance fleet like a jeweled battlefield. Swirling cerulean gases mingled with streaks of stardust, while ancient planetoids orbited in silent vigil. Admiral Celine Archer's flagship, Intrepid Dawn, led 4 cruiser wings and 6 escort frigates into position, phalanx formation shimmering in the nebula's iridescent glow. Every sensor glowed red with contact alerts. 10 Aegis-class human cruisers arrayed in a perfect defensive circle around the new cluster's gravity-stabilized waypoint. "Commencing final approach," Archer intoned. "Phase conduits locked. All wings on my mark. Engage ion-net torpedoes." Her voice was calm, betraying none of the tension rippling through her command crew. "Mark!" came the terse response from Lieutenant Harrow at Tactical. A volley of torpedoes shot forth, their glowing traces weaving a lattice of charged filaments aimed at the pylons of the nearest Aegis cruiser. For a heartbeat, the vessel's cobalt-blue shields quivered under the assault. Then, in a stunning feat of engineering, the cruiser vanished, its hull receding into a quantum slipstream without so much as a warning flare. "Impossible," Malik muttered, jaw clenched. "They've integrated a slip reactivation module at each junction. We sever one conduit and another instantly reroutes the power." Archer's fingers snapped across her console. "Abort boarding. Procedure. All units pivot to defensive posture, target their launch bays, disable fighter deployments." At that moment, the nebula's gas currents refracted the starlight, revealing dozens of human slipskimmer fighters bursting into existence. Like bolts of cosmic lightning, sleek and razor-thin, they darted forward, micro-singularity torpedoes trailing behind them like comet tails. "Hold fire until they cluster," Archer ordered. "Then unleash the plasma net." As the fighters closed, the Alliance ships unleashed a web of searing plasma that trapped half the skimmers in molten grids. But the survivors weaved through the gaps, unleashing torpedoes that impacted against shields with thunderous concussions. Warning klaxons blared across every bridge. The Intrepid Dawn shuddered under the onslaught. "Bridge to engineering," Archer snapped. "Stabilize shield harmonics and prepare countermeasure bursts on my command." "Shields at 40%, came the weary reply. "Countermeasures charging at 29%. Archer's gaze hardened. Beyond the skirmish, the human flagship Pioneer's Dawn loomed, its slipstream reactor glowing like a sapphire. Sun. It drifted into Alliance sensor range and released a pulse of folded space energy that rippled through the nebula currents, collapsing several Alliance frigate warp cores in a silent yet devastating wave. "Evasive maneuver Alpha 6, Archer shouted. "All hands brace for impact." The fleet scattered amid the nebula's swirling tendrils, ships executing looping evasive thrusts to avoid the folded space blast. The Intrepid Dawn twisted on its axis, swinging broadside to bear its heaviest batteries. "Open a channel to Pioneer's Dawn," Archer commanded, voice echoing with steely resolve. "If we're to settle this, let it be face to face." Her comm officer hesitated, then keyed the sequence. The holoscreen flickered, and Admiral Celine Archer's own stern visage appeared against the human flagship's darkened bridge. For a long moment, 2 stars of command stared across the gulf of space, each measuring the other's will. Then Archer spoke. "This conflict gains us nothing. Stand down your fighters. We can negotiate terms even now." The human admiral's eyes met hers, unwavering. Your tactics have proven our point. You do not understand slipstream, but we respect strength where we find it. We will withdraw, this time unpursued, on the condition that you convene a joint technical council at Orenthia within 3 standard days. Archer's hand hovered over the engage control. Around her, the bridge crew held collective breath. At last, she nodded. Agreed. Fleet, hold position. Countermeasures. Deploy. A hush fell as the nebula's glow settled back into silent splendor. The human ships phased out in a serene pulse of light, retreating into folds of subspace. Before the Alliance could muster pursuit, on the intrepid dawn, Admiral Archer exhaled for the first time in hours. The gambit had faltered, but a fragile ceasefire held. Beyond the shimmer of ion nets and folded space blasts lay a new, uneasy respect. In the aftermath of battle, both sides had glimpsed the promise and peril of humanity's enigmatic power. And as the Alliance fleet regrouped, one truth resonated in Archer's mind. In this vast ocean of stars, the war for the future of slipstream technology had only just begun. In the days that followed the clash at Zeta 9, the galaxy trembled on a precipice. Across hundreds of star systems, worlds tuned in to real-time updates from the Alliance, wondering whether the fragile ceasefire between the Archelian Star Alliance and humanity would hold, or if war was merely delayed. Even the oldest races, long comfortable in their dominance, now whispered of human ingenuity with a mix of awe and quiet fear. On Orenthia, beneath the vast dome of the Grand Conclave, the chamber was filled once more. But this time, the tension was laced with something new, humility. A council reconsidered. High Chancellor Myrtal stood again at the center dais, her silver robes now adorned with the insignia of emergency unity, a mark reserved only for moments of historic significance. The humans, she said slowly, have done more than unveil forbidden ships. They have cracked the subspace lattice. They travel not through corridors, but between the threads of reality itself. Her many eyes scanned the room. We are no longer the architects of this galaxy's limits. We must now become its stewards. The Vreth ambassador, Kelver, floated forward, his opalescent form dimmed in a gesture of deference. We underestimated them. We believed their terrestrial past made them too fragile, too reactive. But they used that very desperation to innovate outside our models. They solved equations we considered unsolvable because they were not burdened by our doctrine. Admiral Quastel of the Lumarines folded her crystalline wings inward, and yet we cannot ignore the threat either. They hold weapons that ripple the fabric of space. A single miscalculation could unravel entire sectors. We must act, but through strategy, not fear. A new voice broke in. Elise Chen, the human envoy, now formally granted an observer's seat in the conclave. She stood with dignity, bearing the sigil of Earth over her chestplate. We came to show what humanity had achieved, not to conquer, but to offer a different path forward, she said. We were locked in our own dying solar system. Our sun began to fade, our planetary ecosystems collapsed, so we gambled. We reached beyond accepted science because we had no choice. And what we found was not just a way to survive, but to evolve. She activated a data shard, projecting the inner workings of the Pioneer's dawn. Complex diagrams of the quantum slipstream array, its latticework reactor pulsating with recursive probability engines. A silence followed, part reverence, part shock. This technology, she continued, will not remain exclusive to us. We offer it freely, under supervision. A joint research initiative, equal leadership. Shared exploration rights beyond the Centauri frontier, Myrtal regarded her. And if we decline, Chen didn't hesitate, then humanity will chart the frontier alone. But we prefer not to, because what we found out there is bigger than ships, or power, or sovereignty. She tapped her console. A projection bloomed across the chamber, something no one expected. The deeper discovery, not coordinates, not a battle simulation, a map, or what might become one. Dozens of symbols, half-decoded, spiraled outward in perfect symmetry from a dark region beyond even Alliance territory. This, Chen said, was transmitted when we first breached Slipstream, not from any known source. A signal, a beacon, from beyond the mapped universe. Even the AIB agents leaned forward. "We believe we triggered something," she said. "Something ancient, something watching." Now the silence was full, heavy, with possibilities. Mayatol, for the first time in decades, looked uncertain. "You're saying Slipstream was not invented, it was found?" Chen nodded. "And if we found it, so can others. If we remain divided when that happens..." She let the sentence hang. Everyone understood. A new pact. The Chancellor turned slowly to the gathered delegates. "This council must vote," she declared, "not on whether humanity should be punished, but whether we will step forward together into the unknown, or fall apart as new powers rise to claim the stars." Votes were cast, one by one, hands raised, tendrils flicked, wings tilted. Even Rimshar of the Joraxians, growling under his breath, raised his claw. Unanimous. The first joint venture within. Weeks, a new fleet stood assembled at the edge of the known galaxy. Alliance cruisers retrofitted with human slipstream cores. Human scientists working side by side with Vreth harmonic analysts and Lumarine energy architects. Flags from hundreds of worlds emblazoned on the hull of the lead exploration vessel, the Unity's Edge, and aboard her, Admiral Celine Archer and Ambassador Elise Chen stood on the observation deck, watching as the final countdown ticked down. "Any regrets?" Chen asked softly. Archer shook her head. "Only that it took this long for us to stop pretending we weren't already in the same fight." With a hum like starlight folding into itself, the Unity's Edge launched into the slipstream, this time not to attack or to hide, but to reach. Epilogue. Shadows beyond, far beyond the reach of the Alliance or Earth, in the cold black between galaxies, something stirred. Not organic, not artificial, something older. The signal humans had triggered echoed back, fractured but clear. A vast intelligence, dormant no longer. It watched the ships vanish into the stream. It remembered, and it waited. The galaxy had changed, and what had once slept among the stars was now waking.